Hello, Dr. Smith. My name is Ronald Colwell, and I chose to do my presentation on former Nissan CEO Carlos Ghosn and the fraud he's been accused of. First, I'll start with the question, what is fraud? Fraud is different from unintentional errors. The main principle about fraud has to do with the intent or for the purpose of gaining an advantage over another person through false pretense. Or, the definition you gave us, fraud is deception that includes the following elements: a representation about a material point which is false, and intentionally or recklessly so, which is believed and acted upon by the victim to the victim's damage. Carlos Ghosn was born in Brazil and is currently 66 years old. He has an engineering degree from École des Mines de Paris. He has held major positions and board seats at major companies around the world. The focus of this presentation will be when he was the CEO and chairman of Nissan Motors. He's had charges brought against him by both U.S. and Japanese authorities, such as underreporting compensation and aggravated breach of trust. Japan says he underreported his income by more than $80 million, while the U.S. says that number is more than $140 million. There are many different types of fraud. For the purposes of this case, I will focus on management fraud, where the perpetrator is the management of the company and the victims are the company's shareholders, debt holders, and regulators, such as taxing authorities. This is the most common form of fraud. Management fraud involves top management's deceptive manipulation of financial statements. Symptoms of fraud can be separated into 6 groups, such as accounting anomalies, internal control weaknesses, analytical anomalies, extravagant lifestyle, unusual behavior, and tips and complaints. This case seems to be more geared towards extravagant lifestyle, so that's what I'll focus on. Most people who commit fraud are under financial pressure. Sometimes the pressures are real. Sometimes they merely represent greed or a perceived need. Once they meet their financial needs, they usually continue to steal. For Carlos Ghosn, he had $15 million homes, a fleet of private jets, like the one pictured here, which cost $64.5 million. Carlos made a salary of $17 million per year, and before his court appearance, he had a net worth of more than $120 million. Nissan submitted a report that details personal expenses of Mr. Ghosn, which it claimed were unrelated to corporate purposes, like dinners at the Montmartre Museum in Paris, guest entertainment at the Cannes Film Festival, and jewelry purchase at Cartier stores. The fraud triangle consists of pressure at the top, which can be financial or emotional force pushing towards fraud. Opportunity, which is the ability to execute the plan without being caught. And then rationalization, personal justification of the dishonest actions. Studies suggest that 95% of all frauds involve either financial or vice-related pressures. With that being said, financial pressure is the most common type of pressure to commit, the most common type of pressure to commit fraud. In Carlos's case, greed and living beyond one's means. He had multi-million-dollar homes in Rio de Janeiro, Beirut, Paris, Tokyo, New York, and Amsterdam. Carlos also sent all 4 of his children to Stanford University and provided a lavish lifestyle for his wife, Carol, their 4 children, and himself. A list of financial pressures include greed, living beyond one's means, inability to pay bills or personal debt, poor credit, personal financial losses, or unexpected financial needs. Opportunity. A perceived opportunity to commit fraud, conceal it, or avoid being punished is the second element of the fraud triangle. Once again, in Carlos's circumstance, in the year 2004, Nissan gave Ghosn the authority to set executive compensation, including his own. They also gave him the ability to use company funds for personal expenses and other wrongdoing. He had the cooperation of board member and co-conspirator Greg Kelly. The cooperation with Greg Kelly gave them the ability to have secret contracts and able to backdate letters to approve Ghosn for Nissan's long-term incentive plan. Next is rationalization. Nearly every fraud involves an element of rationalization. Most fraud perpetrators are first-time offenders who would not commit other crimes. Common rationalizations include things like the organization owes me, nobody will get hurt, I deserve more, it's for a good purpose, something has to be sacrificed, either my integrity or my reputation, or the government spends taxes collected on things I don't support. When Carlos Ghosn came on with Nissan in the early 2000s, they were on near collapse, and he was able to turn the company around, so that gave him the name Mr. Fix-It. He felt he had the power and was owed extra for saving the company and receiving awards such as the 2002 Asia Businessman of the Year. In 2003, Fortune identified him as one of the top 10 most powerful people in business outside the United States. The Financial Times and PwC named him the fourth most respected business leader in 2003. He felt untouchable and had a celebrity status in Japan and the business world, and his life has even been chronicled in Japanese comics. The investigation by Japanese authorities is when they formally charged Carlos Ghosn with breach of trust, piling a new count of financial and property onto his existing charges in a move that adds pressure on him and ensures he remains jailed. He was initially arrested in November 2019 on suspicion of hiding the true amount of his executive compensation and spent over 100 days in detention, racking up 2 additional arrests. Prosecutors have indicted him on 4 charges of financial wrongdoing, including temporarily shifting his personal financial losses onto Nissan's books. He was released in early March after paying $9 million in bail and agreeing to strict limits on his activities that put him under virtual house arrest. The initial investigation by the SEC opened its inquiry in January 2019 in response to charges brought by Japanese prosecutors against Mr. Ghosn that he conspired with Greg Kelly, a former Nissan director, to conceal a retirement payout that was never completed. Regulators said the scheme had unfolded over a roughly 9-year period, ending only with the cases against them. Nissan itself was indicted on related charges. The SEC announced that it had reached a deal with Nissan to settle allegations that Nissan concealed from investors a plan to pay more than $140 million in retirement benefits to Mr. Ghosn. The company will pay a $15 million fine to settle the civil fraud charges. The former chairman who was to get the undisclosed compensation package, Carlos Ghosn, agreed to pay a $1 million penalty. So this case is somewhat unresolved, so there's not a guilty or not guilty verdict. Although Carlos Ghosn claims he is innocent of any wrongdoing, complaining of what he said was a conspiracy to bring him down and decrying the country's justice system as corrupt, inhumane, and hostile. He said, "These allegations are untrue and I should never have been arrested in the first place." He said at a packed news conference in Beirut, "I'm here to clear my name." Ghosn stunned Japan by jumping bail and fleeing to Lebanon, evading trial on 4 charges of financial misconduct while running the auto company Nissan. The cost of his escape included $14 million in forfeited bail money, while the operation that saw him celebrate New Year's Eve in Beirut could have cost $15 million or more.